It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Auburn Podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. Brought to you by Fetch Me Home Delivery. Use FetchMeHomeDelivery.com or the free Fetch Me app. Use promo code FetchMe20, FetchMe20 for your first delivery free. I'm Zac Blackerby, joined in studio by two of my very good friends. Painter Sharpless of ESPN 1067. Good morning. Hello, sir.
Howdy, howdy.
Michael Pappas of ESPN 1067. Good morning. Hello, sir.
Y'all mind if I have a good day?
I don't mind at all.
All right.
You can have a great day. That's fine.
I had a pretty great day yesterday, not going to lie. So hopefully that rolls over into today.
Sweet.
Got a lot to do.
Positive momentum's a good thing. Positive momentum is a fantastic thing. Gus Malzahn spoke to the media yesterday. Said Auburn is going to redshirt running back Mark Anthony Richards, still rehabbing from a knee injury. Said he may play in the bowl game. Y'all's thoughts?
That's the right move. I
agree. Yeah.
I don't think that right now there's really much need to use other running backs. You've got a crowded running back position group, and it's going to get even more crowded next year when Tank
Bigsby, yeah.
When Tank is on campus. It's actually a really fascinating position group. Should be a strength for the team. I think this is a good thing. No need to rush him back. You don't really need him anyway.
So Malzahn believes Boobie Whitlow will be back in 100% against Georgia. So now your running back situation with Mark Anthony Richards sounds like he is officially out for the Georgia game.
Okay, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but as far as this red shirt goes, Mark Anthony Richards could play in the next 4 games in red shirt.
Yeah,
right?
but he's not healthy. He's not healthy.
Yeah, no, but
no point in rushing him back. You don't need him. And even if he was, very close to being healthy, why not just wait? And if you want to get him in on some special teams, like in the Samford and Alabama game, maybe that. I definitely think playing him in the bowl game, there's no downside to that.
I also think he'd be like the 4th guy. The 4th running back?
At least, yeah. I'm just saying that, I don't really, I understand that this has made it official or whatever, but.
Well, how much is he practicing? How many reps has he taken, I wonder?
This is just one of those things I'm like, this is not, we knew this.
Well, he said that they were going to redshirt him.
Yeah.
So,
I think they were holding. I think
news.
there was.
Sorry,
they were holding out. I think to see if I'm not sure they knew how long he'd be out, and I think it's pretty evident at this point that he just doesn't have a. I think you're right. We probably knew this at this point in the year. This is probably what it was coming to. Mm-hmm. But I think that they were keeping the option open to see if they could play him at least on special teams.
And I know it's news because he confirmed it and made it official or whatever. I'm not I know why we're talking about it. I feel like even if they were to play him in these next 4 games, which they obviously are not, I mean they should still redshirt him either way.
Right. All right, so with Boobie Whitlow being back against Georgia, it seems like it'll be back to normal. I am curious to see what the workload will be now that DJ Williams has appeared to be a pretty effective running back in this offense. So I'm really anticipating that split, whatever it is, to frustrate Auburn fans. I think Boobie Whitlow is going to get the bulk of the carries just because that's kind of what we've seen. I don't think it should be that way. I've really liked DJ Williams so far this year.
Auburn has so many guys that Auburn fans want to see get the football, and it's there's one ball.
Only so many plays.
Yeah, so it's, if Auburn runs 90 plays and you want to get Seth Williams 8 catches and Anthony Schwartz 8 touches and then Boobie Whitlow 20 carries, well, right there you're at 36. And then if you want to get, there's one ball, so there's going to be a lot of guys that finish with 1 or 2 touches in these upcoming games. Hopefully those are, less skilled guys, but yeah, I think you're definitely right. I think DJ Williams should get the lion's share of the carries, but I don't think it's going to happen.
The other most notable thing that I think Malzahn said, Jeremiah Denton and Marlon Davidson, they have practiced and been 100% in the last 2 practices, so Auburn's starting defense should be back in full force against Georgia and have a full week of practice under their belt. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I don't think that's a big surprise. I don't think that they felt like they needed those guys against Ole Miss. Probably on that last drive, a little bit more competitive than they would have liked. But that was a game, I haven't really talked a ton with you guys about it, in which Auburn kind of traded places with LSU the week before, where LSU moved the ball on Auburn but wasn't able to put the ball in the end zone, so ultimately didn't matter.
Yeah.
Auburn did some of that against Ole Miss. But the defense still did its part and played well even without those two guys. I think precautionary there and great news for Auburn. You've got a nice timed bye week, and the defense. I mean, so long as they're not on the field too much against Georgia, I think they'll keep you in a position to win that game and the Iron Bowl.
Finding the right pros for home projects can be tough and spark a lot of questions, like, how do I find a pro who can help? Will they do a good job? Will I get a fair price? Well, that's where HomeAdvisor can help. From leaky faucets to major remodels, HomeAdvisor connects you to the right pro for the job in seconds and even helps you get a fair price. Read reviews, check project cost guides, and book appointments. Go to HomeAdvisor.com or download the free HomeAdvisor app to start your next project.
Your team.
Greetings, 12 Locked On Seahawks podcast.
Who dat family, and welcome into this week's Locked On Saints.
Hello to all you Foxborough faithful, Locked On Patriots.
Every day.
Another Victory Monday.
It's officially Throwback Tuesday.
Crossover Wednesday episode.
Thursday Night Football.
It is Red Friday edition.
When it comes to the biggest stories.
And so the Chiefs' news story of today is, unfortunately, at this point in the season, it is continuing to be injuries.
You need to be locked on.
We've touched about it on this show and all over Twitter and all that.
And all of a sudden we have a great football team with a championship defense, a franchise quarterback, a running game that can't be stopped. This is exactly why we watch football.
Good quarterbacks are maximized in good systems, and that's exactly what we're seeing with Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers this season.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
In the Apple Podcast app.
Google Podcasts.
Spotify.
Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, some other news happening. Auburn-related. Former Auburn quarterback Joey Gatewood is visiting Kentucky this weekend. And so Kentucky, interestingly enough, they have a quarterback committed in the 2020 class from Lexington Catholic. His name is Bo Allen, but this Bo is spelled differently. So maybe he can beat out this Bo.
No. Is it the B-E-A-U-X Bo?
No X. It's B-E-A-U.
Okay.
Allen.
I'm seeing more. That name is becoming very popular among the whites these days. Over the last 2 years, I've heard at least 4 babies with that name, and when I graduated college, I don't know if I knew any.
Yeah, I knew one when I was in elementary school or middle school or something, and I thought
sounds like a Dallas name.
I thought that was just the.
Wait, are you from Texas?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I thought that was one of the cooler names, like just with the spelling and everything. I thought it was so cool.
Sounds kind of French,
Zach.
Little Louisiana to it.
Yeah, I think so.
At least with the X.
Maybe B-O-U-G-H. That'd be cool.
Bach.
Bo.
B-A-
Bo.
I don't know.
Bo Nix. But yeah, Joey Gatewood visiting Kentucky. I think that's interesting. And the other programs that are reportedly in the mix, Mississippi State, Florida, and LSU. Joey Gatewood wants to stay in the SEC.
I think this could be a great move for Kentucky, but I'm just not on this train that says whatever team Joey Gatewood goes to that he becomes Justin Fields. I think there's a thought among the Auburn fan base, and I understand that we've talked about it, where there at least seem to have been some moments in the LSU game where you ought to have played him, even if you don't pull him for Bo. I think that much you can concede.
Bo spelled B-O in this situation.
Right, and
it's important to clarify.
We've seen Kentucky with Stoops, and another interesting side piece there. He was the defensive coordinator at one point for Florida State, so Stoops has managed to bring some stability to Kentucky. So I think interesting to see if anything comes of that. But I'm not convinced that just because he goes there that he wins the job, although I certainly think he could. I'm not, I think it'll depend on a number of factors. But if you tell me he goes to Kentucky and eventually becomes a starter, I can believe that, and I can see him having some success. But I'm not worried about Joey Gatewood doing what Justin Fields is doing at Ohio State. I'm not worried about him doing what Kyler Murray did at Oklahoma, or even Jalen Hurts is doing. I think that they're in a different tier.
Well, of those schools, though, Mississippi State I'm not worried about. You want me to listen again?
The schools again?
Yeah, so Kentucky this weekend, then Mississippi State, Florida, and LSU. So, I think if he goes to Florida and Mullins gets his hands on Joey,
that could be a really exciting pairing.
Yeah,
but that could be a good pairing.
Okay, but they have either a true freshman or
Emory
redshirt freshman, Emory Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no guarantee he wins that job. At Mississippi State, they've got Garrett Schrader, that true freshman, who has actually played pretty well this season.
It would be intriguing to see Joey Gatewood work with Mullen, because I think he's definitely done a lot with less. I mean, I would be intrigued to see a guy that could take Nick Fitzgerald and make him productive get his hands on Joey Gatewood.
And then LSU is interesting just because whoever is quarterback there, though we hadn't really seen this in the past, but I mean, they're going to be in a great situation to succeed just because they're so talented. But once again, I agree with you, Michael. If he has to sit out a year and there's younger quarterbacks that already have the job and they don't leave, it's going to be tough for him to find a spot. So we'll see. We'll see. Just kind of worth looking at.
And notable, he never outright won a job in high school or in college. I think in high school you can talk about the other quarterback being talented, as he also got a scholarship to go play Division I football. And Joey was a top 50 athlete, or top 50 player and the number 1 overall athlete. So obviously he did enough to be very impressive. But I think to Michael's point, it's not just a given.
Zach, I don't know what article you saw about this. I saw one that was from a guy from Kentucky Sports Radio that had Joey's senior year of high school highlight tape in the video. And I watched it, and I've never been further off the Joey Gatewood train than after I watched his high school highlight tape.
I think you weren't impressed with it?
It's not that it wasn't impressive, but it was one of those highlight tapes where the plays are impressive. He's a good runner, but he's a guy who's 6'4", 6'5", 200-something pounds, whatever he is, and he would be breaking tackles and making cuts in the open field against 5'9" white dudes that you're kind of not you expect that, but when you watch Derrick Henry's highlight film from high school, you sit there oh my gosh. And this just was nowhere near something like that for someone that was so highly touted. And then you saw, you can see in his highlight film how at times he's just lazy with his mechanics.
Well,
and that's in his highlight tape.
I think I'm not as high as Zach is on Joey, but I will say it is certainly possible that he has improved in some of those areas as well in the last few years.
I definitely agree.
When you're finished with today's episode, the Locked On Podcast Network has an amazing national show lineup for you. Every Monday, the new Hollinger Duncan NBA show brings you insight from former NBA executive and analytics guru John Hollinger. Rejecting the Screen brings you 2 episodes a week with fun NBA talk and a long-form interview every Thursday. Your daily 30-minute NBA show is Locked On NBA, updating you on the previous night's action and looking ahead to what's next. The Locked On Podcast Network All-Star National Lineup, Hollinger Duncan NBA Show, Rejecting the Screen, and Locked On NBA.
Hey, it's Noah Kozlov from Rejecting the Screen, and this week, former Grizzlies VP of Basketball Operations John Hollinger, co-host of Hollinger and Duncan here on Locked On, told a story of Tony Allen being in Klay Thompson's head during the 2015 playoffs.
He had done such a good job in the first 3 games, though, and had done such a good job against Klay historically, that early in that game, Klay Thompson comes off a pin down, catches the ball, and he is just wide open. And his first thing goes off in his head is, well, wait, where's Tony? He turns and looks behind him 180 degrees because he figured that's where Tony Allen had to be. He figured Tony had to be around somewhere. He was wide open. He just turned and looks directly behind him. Where is this guy? Where is he coming from?
Join Adam Stenko and me every Tuesday and Thursday by subscribing to Rejecting the Screen, wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's look at the recruiting news. Big recruiting news yesterday. Auburn landed a stud 4-star defensive end Jay Hardy from Chattanooga McCauley High School of Tennessee. He chose the Tigers over Tennessee. 6'4", 290 pounds. I mean, that's exactly what you want. The number 97 player in the 247 Sports Composite. And, this is a guy that, if you're a good defensive lineman, I would want to go to Auburn. So, good for him.
It's a big pickup for Auburn, and Rodney Garner continues to, I think, probably massage any concern Auburn fans might have about the defensive line. Look, it's going to be an interesting reload for Auburn at defensive line because I think they're going to be really good again next year, and yet at the same time they may not be and almost certainly won't be as good as they are this year.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they won't still be a top 20 defensive line and probably a top 20 defensive unit in the country.
Right.
But when you have what looks like a top 10 draft pick, a guy that's getting his name tossed around in the first round. And, Nick Coe hasn't put it all together, but there are obviously other pieces. I get it. It's just not going to be likely a statistically dominant next season.
Well, and folks are going to look at this recruiting class to be the class that replaces some of those guys.
Sure.
That's not going to be the case at all. I mean, the guys that are replacing them are already on campus.
Well,
I think
this is about a 180 from what the other side of the ball, that offensive line, has been in recruiting over the last few years. Whereas Rodney Garner and Kevin Steele have been able, and you could say the same thing at the other levels with Travis Williams' ability to recruit at linebacker and how they look in the secondary with young talent. They have not missed a lot on big prospects, or at least on the guys they want. And this player happens to be a big prospect if you're concerned about recruiting rankings.
And the commitment piece, Jay Hardy talks a lot about. There's some quotes about him talking about Marlon Davidson, and he kind of reminds me of Marlon Davidson, that true defensive end. I mean, now it seems like you're either a defensive tackle or you want to be a buck outside linebacker pass rusher. But this guy is a true defensive end.
But see, I think there's a chance he's already 290. I think if he gets on campus, and it would be exciting to see him, stay lean and play end. I would like that a lot. But I think if you're 290 and you put on 15, 20, like that doesn't seem difficult. Suddenly I think you're looking at a guy that could be about 310.
That's a good point.
Playing tackle.
That's a good point.
And his comp, Nick Fairley. So interesting.
Little three technique.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you may be right. He may stick to end, but I think his frame would allow him to go interior.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, he is already 290, and these guys typically gain 20 pounds their first 2 years there. That's a solid point.
It's either way. It's a great pickup for him.
Yeah. I gained 50 when I came to college.
Really?
So.
You feel good about that?
Different kind of weight, yeah, or was it all muscle? All girth.
Actually, a little bit of both.
Okay.
How about that?
Chunky.
Bulking season. #.
Yummy.
Hardy, all right, so he's a 19th recruit in this class. Auburn moved from the 13th ranked class to the number 8, so now in the top 10. That's kind of your benchmark goal that we've seen with Malzahn classes. There are now 2 defensive linemen in this 2020 class. The other one is Daniel Foster Allen. He is from Mobile. And so Keith Niebuhr wrote this, but now they want to add 2 more defensive linemen to this class. They want another defensive tackle, and they want another buck player. So and that's kind of their goal. It sounds like to round out this recruiting class. So we have another voicemail to get to, and I want to make sure I'm not memorized the number yet. So hold on. All right, you can call and leave a voicemail at 205-502-4285, and let's listen to this.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. I just had a couple thoughts from Saturday's game, mostly regarding the offense. The first one had to do with play calling. So while I thought the play calling was better than normal, meaning passing on first downs, easier throws for Bo Nix and stuff like that, third down I didn't really like the third down play call. So oftentimes we were in third and medium, like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, but Gus would call up a 50-50 ball to Seth Williams about 30 yards down the field. To me, that doesn't really make sense. When you're nickel and diming them down the field, you get to the 30-yard line, all of a sudden you want to throw a bomb. Doesn't really make much sense. The second one was we had a lot more push on the interior, I thought. I thought Nick Brahms had a really big difference on the game. Also, when you're throwing the ball, it opens up the run a lot more, so that has stuff to do with it too. And the last one was I thought while Bo had that one fumble and the almost interception, which Anthony Schwartz was running wide open over the middle of the field on, he was much better. His passer rate, I believe, was like 30 for 40-something. So that was really, really, really improved, and he stepped up in the pocket, which was really good to see. And the most impressive play he had to me was actually an incomplete pass. It was in the first quarter. He had really hard pressure. He thought about dropping out of the pocket and running, but he stepped up and delivered a throw to Sal Cannello over the middle, but unfortunately he fell short. But it was still a really, really good, really mature play. Thanks for taking my call. See you on the show.
Appreciate you calling. So there are really 3 things there: play calling, the play of Brahms, and then, of course, Bo Nix. We'll start with the play calling. I've said this before. I really didn't have a huge issue with the play calling. I know he mentioned a few, third down plays where maybe he threw it a little bit farther down and took a riskier play, but that's part of what Gus has done throughout his career as a play caller. I don't mind being aggressive just because over the past few years we hadn't seen that at all. We hadn't seen Auburn be aggressive at all. So I don't hate that. I understand I understand why you feel that way, but if they were to connect on any of those, I think the mindset of it is a little different.
A few things. One, I think Auburn played with better pace in this game. You could call that aggression if you wanted to, substituting less. And when Auburn's able to get that initial first down, it often allows them to do that. But I think in the Florida game, I had more quarrels with Gus Malzahn's play calling than I did in the LSU game. The thing that probably frustrated me more about Ole Miss, and there may be some things I just simply don't know or did not see that Gus Malzahn and the offensive staff saw, but I felt very much like we would see Anthony Schwartz and some other players get a lot of opportunities on Saturday against Ole Miss, an inferior opponent, and it sort of feels like some of those weapons aren't being used in their biggest games. Now, by comparison, Auburn ran a ton more plays against Ole Miss, so they had more opportunity to target and use more players than they did against LSU. But sometimes it feels like the best weapons aren't always used by Gus in those big games. And so my frustration was, get Schwartz involved and some of those other really talented players in your biggest games. And also, I like the pace. I think that's excellent for Auburn if they can get that first down.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Zach, what you said there at the end with about the long passes, that I think it's a little bit revisionist history to say, it's a bad play call when they don't complete the pass. Because, if they did complete the pass and picked up 57 yards on 3rd and 4, you'd be extremely excited and love that
it becomes a great call.
Yeah. And we see it all the time on 4th down, right? The team converts the 4th down. Coach is a genius for going for it. They don't get it. Coach is a bum for going for it.
Yeah, they're an idiot for going for it. Right, absolutely. He mentioned the play of Brahms. I 100% agree. I've been a guy that's kind of been in the Caleb Kim camp, really dating back since last year, and I do think Brahms is better. I don't think the difference is huge, but I think as far as for the future of the program, Brahms is going to be the starter next year. And I think it kind of gives you a little bit of experience coming back because they're not going to have a whole lot of that on the offensive front. I thought Brahms did fine.
Yeah, he got beat sometimes, but I think there's a real argument based on the way that they were graded in terms of running behind Harrell that he was the second best on the day. And I think, based on the fact that you probably have seen Caleb Kim get beat some too. Like you're saying, not a huge difference, but also he's probably a little bit better in the run game. So this is sort of an oversimplified way of looking at it, but if you're expecting your center to get beat a few times a game, either one and one of them is better in one phase running the ball or at least creating holes.
Yeah,
you kind of default to Brahms. I think at this point it's clear that Kim they've continued to give him opportunities, and I think now they're going in a different direction.
And then Bo Nix. His play, I think he was fine. I don't think he was the reason why this was a close game.
He got a helmet sticker. I think some of that might be intentional. They're trying to pump him up before the 2 biggest games of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But they moved the ball. They got to finish and score. That was the knock against LSU. Wasn't in that game, LSU's offense was successful, but they didn't score. And Auburn was successful against Ole Miss, but didn't score. And so moving the ball in between the 20 and 20 or the 30 and 30, that's not good enough. Auburn's got to finish drives. That's killed them in some big games in the past.
Did you guys see what Penn Athletics, what they changed their Twitter bio to?
Yes, it's a nicely done trolling by the Penn Quakers.
Yeah, so at Penn Athletics, the Penn Quakers, their bio is now the official Twitter feed of Penn Athletics, Big in Auburn, #FightOnPenn. And for those that don't know, they beat Alabama. And Alabama, I believe, is the only team in the conference with a loss right now. So
I think Alabama still can and likely will finish in the top half of the league. I like their chances to really improve as the year goes along. I think they made a good hire in Nate Oates. Certainly, I think he has at least done his part so far. He is energizing the fan base. He's hit the road hard recruiting. He's trying to create relationships with high schools since he's not from the region. He did a good job of getting players who were thinking about leaving the program to come back.
Yeah.
He got a transfer, a former 5-star transfer from Villanova. So, there are some reasons for Alabama fans to be excited, but it obviously wasn't the start they wanted.
This is a very fun couple days for Auburn fans, LSU fans, Tennessee fans, whomever gets to sit back and kind of laugh that Penn beat Alabama. But this doesn't give me – this makes me a little nervous for the rest of the season because by all reports, by everything we've seen through his career, Nate Oates is a good basketball coach, and we know that that's a talented basketball team. And, I mean, that poor kid who missed the 2 free throws that would have tied the game there.
And he scored 30 that night. I mean, he's a good player.
Yeah. It just doesn't – I'm a little worried now that Alabama is just going to go on an absolute tear. But we'll see.
We will see. Well, cool, guys. This was fun. Painter, where can people find you and hear you, bud?
Listen to the lunch break from 11 to 1 on ESPN 1067. We've got that podcasted for you wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, all that good stuff. And I'm on Twitter at Painter Sharpless.
Fantastic. Michael?
Follow me on Twitter at CouchPapTato.
Follow me on Twitter at Zac Blackerby. Follow the show on Twitter, Locked On Auburn. Locked On Auburn breaking 1,000 follows last night. Thank you for that. So head over there, and we'll see you tomorrow to wrap up our work week. This has been another edition of the Locked On Auburn podcast.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
When you're finished with today's episode, the Locked On Podcast Network has an amazing national show lineup for you. Every Monday, the new Hollinger Duncan NBA show brings you insight from former NBA executive and analytics guru John Hollinger. Rejecting the Screen brings you 2 episodes a week with fun NBA talk and a long-form interview every Thursday. Your daily 30-minute NBA show is Locked On NBA, updating you on the previous night's action and looking ahead to what's next. The Locked On Podcast Network All-Star National Lineup, Hollinger Duncan NBA Show, Rejecting the Screen, and Locked On NBA.